Liz, Karen, and who is that? Deshane have joined us online, and here's our in-house sangha. You see him? So, just to touch on the introduction from previously, the point of the written introduction to the sutta and the sutta itself is that when we continue to give in to greed, aversion, and deluded thinking, we can only expect to foster further greed, aversion, and deluded thinking. And that the only resolution that I can think of and that the Buddha could think of is understanding what's occurring in the world, which is stated as Four Noble Truths. And from that understanding comes a non-reactive mind that is settled in peace and always strives to work for peace. It's a mind that is incapable of working or exempling anything other than peace. That's the essence of an awakened human being, isn't it? So as Dhamma practitioners, we are, not sure who this is. As Dhamma practitioners, we are fortunate to have a method to live in the world without getting entangled in the world. We use that word an awful lot. And we get entangled in the world through, as the Buddha taught, through desire. We get entangled with other people through desire. So it is simply the desire that things be different than they are that we start reacting to things and making poor decisions. It's not expected that the world is going to be saved through the Buddha's teaching. He never thought that was possible. He never set himself up as a savior, and he never presented his teachings as a salvific religion. But that doesn't mean that we cannot influence the world in the only way that I think is going to bring real change. I don't expect Louis Farrakhan or David Duke to walk in here. But if they did, and they were symptom-free, they'd be as welcome as anyone else. Why? Because that's the approach. There's no hatred in us, so why wouldn't we open our arms to anyone, no matter what their past was, and no matter what harsh judgments I may have made of them, or them as a statue, because all of that is irrelevant. What's most important to a peaceful human population is individual understanding of Four Noble Truths. And we are engaged in that. And we recognize when we're not engaged in our practice, when we continue to stick the second arrow, as the Buddha teaches here. So let me just read the sutta. And I'm skipping the introduction. I trust that you've all read it. But if you haven't, I encourage you to please do so, because it is absolutely brilliant writing. It makes the point. It's a good introduction to the sutta in the context of what's been occurring. The Sallatha Sutta, the two arrows. In the Sallatha Sutta, a question is put to the Buddha as to what is the distinguishing factor between a well-instructed and well-informed Dhamma practitioner and those who have no understanding of the Four Noble Truths. And again, look at the contrast between what the Buddha is describing. I got a better way to let people in here. Between what the Buddha is describing as awakened and those that don't understand Four Noble Truths. It's not a moral judgment. It's simply an observation of a Dhamma teacher using the chaos in the world, or the self-inflicted chaos, as an example of authentic Dhamma practice. The Buddha responds, "Friends, listen and pay close attention. Ordinary, uninformed person feels feelings of pleasure, feelings of pain, and neutral feelings, meaning ambiguous feelings, which is what manifests as boredom in meditation often. One well-informed of the Four Noble Truths feels feelings of pleasure, feelings of pain, and neutral feelings. When, through the sixth sense base, an uninformed person experiences feelings of pain, they are sorrowful, they grieve, they become distraught and irate. The reason why we do that is because we're looking to place blame for the way that we feel. I feel that I'm oppressed, I have to find someone to blame, rather than take responsibility for the feeling, rather than insisting that the action that's causing my feeling be different than it is. And some minds will jump immediately to an extreme view. Well, what about when a cop is beating you to death? That's not what I'm talking about, because that's not a common occurrence in the world. We're talking about how to live in a world where some cops kill people, because that's been going on forever. And continued ignorance will only continue that. The only way to change that officer's mind or any other racist mind is through understanding. It's not through me telling them, you know what, you're a racist and you should die because of it. What I should do is invite them into my own understanding, if it's possible. And if it's not, I simply walk away in peace. The uninformed feels two pains. And notice if we did that, we wouldn't feel these two pains. The uninformed feels two pains. The physical pain of the experience and the mental pain caused by reaction arising from clinging to views ignorant of Four Noble Truths. And I'm not just talking about racism now. I'm talking about reaction to things like government shutdowns or ever-changing worldly environments. It's from a lack of understanding that we react to that in any way other than just understanding. It doesn't mean that we have to agree with what's occurring. I certainly don't agree with anybody killing another human being for any reason. But I also don't agree with some of the decisions made on a global population. But that doesn't mean I have to lose my mind over it, does it? In fact, that's the whole point of the Dhamma, that we live peacefully in a world. Let the world do what it has to do because it's rooted in ignorance. But I can maintain a secluded, well-concentrated mind and remain at peace, which is the ultimate benefit of having a human life, isn't it? To be at peace moment by moment as life unfolds. It's an act of radical acceptance. You know, you've heard me say often that as Dhamma practitioners, we gain an advantage over most people because we learn the significant distinction between approval and acceptance. Certainly, we don't have to approve of things, and we can't approve of some of the things that occur in the world, but we accept it not because grim determination, it's happening. We accept it because we understand where it's coming from. Ignorance of Four Noble Truths. Just as the Buddha said 2,600 years ago. Doing that, reacting to worldly events, as the Buddha said, is like being hit with an arrow, and then by request, being hit again by another arrow. The two arrows. The sixth sense base, this is my commentary. The sixth sense base is the five physical senses perceived through consciousness. Consciousness here refers to ordinary ongoing thinking rooted in ignorance of Four Noble Truths, resulting in perceptions that can only continue ignorance. And that is those perceptions, the perception that there's something wrong with me or wrong in the world leads to a mental formation, a mental fabrication of a concept that holds the wrong view. And some of those concepts are racism. But racism is a concept. Hatred is the motivation towards racism. And if we keep focusing on racism and let racism generate hatred in those oppressed, we're not getting anywhere, are we? Because we're not introducing understanding into the equation. In fact, we're encouraging further reaction. The world isn't possible of doing anything else yet, but we are. We are. And that's our responsibility. You heard me say over and over and over again, not that I mind saying it, in fact, I love saying it. The most loving thing I can do for myself and all other human beings, including Officer Chauvin, is to take to the Dhamma and awaken. Because then as I'm awakened, I won't hate an incredibly troubled and deluded human being. I won't approve of what he did, but I will be able to accept it and remain at peace. And so the excitement that you feel in my voice is not excitement generated by hatred. It's excitement generated by knowing the solution and actually being able to teach it here. The Buddha continues. Let me find out where the Buddha continues. Oh, sorry. Yeah, can't find my place again. Oh, here it is. Wait a minute. The Buddha continues. As the person is experiencing pain, pain resistance occurs. It's such an important line. Pain resistance. It's because of the reaction that I no longer want to have, but I can't not have it because now I'm attached to it. Pain resistance occurs, which is another way of calling of identifying conditioned thinking, conditioned thinking conditioned by pain, now forging a resistance to ever-changing occurrences in the world, pain, that we see as pain. And that conditioned thinking leads to what we call today confirmation bias. And once we accept the view caused by that pain and the following view of who to blame for my pain, we're now stuck in that view. And that view can only foster an ignorance. And it can only be encouraged to foster by our associations. That pain resistance occurs leading to resistance obsession. That's what I just described. Confirmation bias or conditioned thinking is another way of saying resistance obsession.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Is that like grasping?
It's immediate grasping, and it's grasping that is not based in reality now anymore. So what a great question. Now the grasping is motivated by my own ignorance, isn't it? The grasping is motivated by my reaction that this pain be different than it is, rather than just experiencing pain as pain, pleasure as pleasure, and getting on with our lives, not getting distracted by those. Thank you for the question. As this person experiences pain, delight or obsession in sensual pleasure occurs. It's a distraction, but there's delight there, isn't there? There's a delight in the I-making of it. I create an identity. Some people create an identity of as a racist. I had an interesting conversation with Michael and Julia coming down. I've lived in white America my entire life. That may sound like a racist statement, but it's just the truth. But most people live in white America. That's just the truth. And in my entire life, I've known one person who I can identify as a racist. It happens to be a family member, but that's irrelevant. I've met thousands and thousands of people in my life, and I've gotten to know many of them on an intimate enough level to know whether they're racist or not. And I don't know any except that one. And I bet most of you in this room and most of you listening would say the same thing. And the whole point I'm making is for me to react to something that is now classified as systemic racism, which is really only individual racism, I lose my mind over it because I'm not seeing it clearly. The fact that there might be hundreds or thousands of white people that hate black people does not infer systemic racism. It infers an understanding of Four Noble Truths as to why it occurs. So calling it systemic is foolish. What is systemic is ignorance. And as long as we continue to classify things that are merely a distraction from the hatred arising from ignorance, we can never hope to resolve the issue. The most loving thing I can do for myself and all other human beings is to take to the Dhamma and awaken. I realized that, I didn't realize it fully, when I was walking in a protest from Washington Square up Fifth Avenue against the still going on Vietnam War. And I won't get into that whole story. I've told it over and over again. But I learned my lesson. And then it took me another 25 years, I think, to understand why that bothered me so much, what occurred during that anti-war march. And now I understand it. Because I was expressing hatred at the world and I didn't understand it. And when something hateful happened during that march, I put it on another person because I couldn't look at it myself. Because I was a peace marcher. I was above all the rest of the world who was rooted in hatred and violence. I have an identity. But the truth of the matter is I didn't resolve my own inner hatred and inner ignorance. And it took the Dhamma to come to grips with that. That doesn't mean I wasn't an overt or even a covert racist. But my hatred of myself manifested in other ways. It manifested as fear, as frustration, as anger over things that I didn't understand. But the cause was a lack of understanding. It had nothing to do with worldly conditions. Worldly conditions change and stay the same. The only thing I can do about ever-changing worldly conditions and the manifestations of ignorance is to develop an understanding of ignorance. It makes perfect sense, doesn't it, when you look at it that way? And then when you're able to look out in the world from a place of understanding, you see the same perspective that the Buddha described 2,600 years ago upon his awakening. The world is a flame with what? A flame with the fires of passion. Listen to this. Person experiences pain, delight, or obsession in sensual pleasure occurs. What did he just describe in the Locust Sutta? Reaction brings obsession as the uninformed does not understand what is actually present. The origination, the allure, the drawback, and the passing away of the feeling. Remember the 4 foundations of mindfulness, how the Buddha teaches us first in meditation to start disassociating with our feelings, meaning stop taking our feelings personally and just understand they are as ephemeral as any other thought or feeling. We learn in proper jhana meditation to recognize feelings as feelings, take a breath and let it pass. We recognize thoughts as a thought, take a breath and let it pass. And we develop deep and profound concentration that we can take off our cushion. And when a feeling might arise, we're able to control our mind and maintain that refined mindfulness, of the Eightfold Path. The Buddha continues. As the uninformed does not understand the origination, the allure, the drawback, and the passing away of the feeling, I got to stop there too, because Lorna explained this so well, probably a year and a half or 2 ago, that she was able to observe this arising and the passing away of the feeling, and that this whole sequence of events, the allure and the drawback, we recognize it now. The allure is the sensual pleasure that ferments grasping after, but we understand it, so we step back from it. We understand the allure as the drawback. We're able to understand the allure and the drawback because of understanding ignorance. And from that point of view, from that right view, we're also able to understand the passing away. So when a powerful emotion overcomes my mind, but I have the Dhamma, no matter how powerful or socially associated that feeling might be, I'm able to not contribute to the chaos in the world by taking a breath and maintaining my refined mindfulness. And anyway, and again, I'm not just talking about protests or riots. I'm talking about every reaction to worldly events. That's just a convenient example that we'll tend to focus on. And actually focusing on people that are protesting is really missing the point. There's, as in all things, there's if there's 1,000 people protesting, there's 1,000 different motivations for those protestations, and they should be accepted so that we can understand it. So I'm not making a statement that nobody should ever protest or anything. Nobody should riot, but I'm not making a statement against protesting. What I am making a statement of is my lack of the need to express myself in that way based on understanding. To me, the way that I think now, and it's the way that my thinking has generated over the last 64 years, is that the most important and powerful and effective protests I can make, I can do it every time an election comes along. People may not agree that a vote is a powerful thing, but I think it is. Let me go back. Understanding the origination, the allure, the drawback, and the passing away of the feeling, any ignorance, obsession about this feeling of pain, pleasure, or neither pleasure nor pain overcomes and obsesses them. I got to read it again because I didn't read it very well. Understanding the allure, the drawback, and the passing away of the feeling, any ignorance, obsession, meaning we're clinging to our obsession, we're obsessed with maintaining our own ignorance about this feeling of pain, pleasure, or neither pleasure nor pain, overcomes the senses and obsesses them. It simply doesn't happen out of understanding. Here, my commentary, here the Buddha teaches how the self-referential reaction to impersonal and ordinary events forms views of Four Noble Truths ignorant of Four Noble Truths that support continued ignorance. This is described in the Garr Sutta as being stuck in the feedback loop of self-referential views, continually reinforced by thinking rooted in ignorance of Four Noble Truths. Again, the past 3 months, but our entire lifetime is a perfect example of that. my commentary. Feeling in this sense is any disturbance in the mind arising from lack of restraint, and that relates directly to the four foundations of mindfulness as well. Any desire that an experience must be different than as occurred, and wanting more or less or no experience is a feeling. The feeling arises from ignorance of Four Noble Truths and is rooted in a personalized and fabricated view of self. The first arrow is simply the stress and unhappiness that occurs in the phenomenal world. The second arrow is the stress and unhappiness caused by ignorance, giving rise to clinging, craving, desire, and aversion. In other words, wanting the people and experience of life to be different than what has occurred. That compounds the initial pain of the experience, the whole point of that reaction. The Buddha continues, sensing pleasure or pain, or neither pleasure nor pain, the uninformed through self-reference or personalizing the experience joins with the experience. The uninformed is joined to birth, aging, sickness, to death, and joined with sorrow, regrets, pain, and despair. Through reaction to the experience, the uninformed joins with and furthers the confusion and suffering. Now the Buddha teaches how a person well informed of the Four Noble Truths and understanding the true nature of stress and unhappiness responds to the arising of dukkha. The well-informed person, when stress arises, has no resistance. Isn't that a wonderful statement? Think about that. And we're all developing it, living in the world without any resistance to what's occurring. It's the essence of a calm and peaceful mind, isn't it? And again, in order to get there, we have to understand that profound difference between approval and acceptance. Most people, and it really not being able to do it is an example of that feedback loop that we talk about often, because it really is two distinct things. But a mind that is clinging to reaction cannot make that distinction often. It's not always, but for the most part, and especially on bigger, more intimate or immediate issues. But approval and acceptance are two different things. And I don't have to approve of anything. It's not my position to approve of anything. Except what I found is the one thing that I need to approve of and I need to be mindful of. What do you think it is? Anybody can answer the question. My Dhamma practice. The only thing I need to approve of to know that I can live peacefully and effectively in the world is my Dhamma practice. I have the framework to understand how to develop an authentic Dhamma practice and save my own mind. And once I can save my own mind, I'm no longer concerned about saving others because I know what's most important is to be an example of that calm and peaceful mind rather than someone who's contributing to the chaos in the world. The Buddha continues, the well-informed person, when stress arises, has no resistance. With no resistance, it's a beautiful line, with no resistance obsession is found. No resistance obsession. So the only way that I can get rid of that resistance obsession is by practicing wise restraint. A core theme of the Dhamma. You often hear me say that the Dhamma resides in this present moment and no other moment. And that's why a well-concentrated mind, that's why jhana meditation is the key to Dhamma practice, because that brings our mind into the present moment in a very simple and direct way. The Buddha continues, they feel one pain, physical, but not mental. As we live in the world, as the Buddha described the essence of suffering, he described first physical pain. But that's simply as a consequence of living in the world, no matter what the pain is. But it's the reaction to ordinary physical pain. And by physical pain, I mean having a physical presence in the world and having things occur in that physical world. It's my mind that is part of that body, 5 clinging aggregates, remember, that is reacting and causing further suffering in the body. It is just as if they were shot with an arrow, but not another. They would feel only one pain, the physical pain. So if we get sick, we get sick. And I'm not saying we shouldn't take this virus here. That's not what I'm saying. We don't react over. We don't take it personally. We don't wonder why did I get sick and my neighbor didn't get sick, or any other event that happens. We simply understand it's a consequence of living in the world. With no delight In the reaction, no delight in sensual pleasure, no pleasure obsession occurs. The well-informed person understands what is actually present and understands its origination, rooted in ignorance, its allure, its drawbacks, and the passing away. So just like I went through quite a few years of violent protest and rioting all around me, I mean, the closest was 7 miles away, it passed. And 2040, so for about 45 years, we lived in relative peace, but the same ignorance. And so that ignorance had to give rise to what's occurred in the last 3 months. And now I'm not talking about the virus, I'm talking about the rioting. And the Buddha is explaining exactly why it occurred. And it's not because of bad people. In fact, if we start looking at people as good or bad, including Officer Chauvin, we've lost our mind. Meaning we've lost our mind to the extent that we can no longer find a solution to the problem. All that we can do is continue legislation. And legislation hasn't changed one thing in my life, significantly, except civil rights. It's interesting, but I don't want to get into that.
So, John,
Yes.
your reaction to a lost pair of keys is no different than your reaction to a riot.
Thank you for bringing it up. Yes.
It's every moment. So
Yep.
it's your practices each moment and how you react between that
Yes.
first arrow and your restraint at the point of contact is really your whole practice.
Boy, thank you, David. That's it. And in order to do that, we have to practice. We have to take in other words, it's not faith that's going to bring us a calm and peaceful mind. It's not the belief in the God Buddha. There is none.
I don't agree with that.
It's direct engagement with developing the Dhamma and understanding what's occurring. Please.
I don't agree with that, respectfully.
Please.
Because a lost pair of keys, and I know what David's trying to say, and I think on the surface it makes sense, is a very tangible thing to circle around.
Yep.
A reaction to a riot is something that's not so much conscious. It's more based on a conditioned way of thinking from the past.
What did you just say? Conditioned way of thinking.
Right, conditioned thinking. So they're not the same thing. I think one.
What's the underlying cause? I don't mean to interrupt
The
you.
underlying cause is ignorance of the it's the reaction to the event.
Yep.
Okay, and any reaction is going to create the suffering. I don't want to get
Yep.
caught in the weeds here, but I've said this before. I think I've been very consistent that when we use analogies, I do think that they do matter. And some, like a chocolate cake analogy you use, I think that's pretty easy to reconcile.
Yep.
But a reaction to an event that's traumatic is not. They may be on the surface the same, but they do create different levels of
Yep.
reaction.
Yep. Oh, I agree completely with you. But what I'm saying and what David's referring to is that the underlying cause to reacting to losing my keys and to riots is still ignorance. Yes. And so that's what of course, it's a completely different event and with much more harrowing consequences. But that's, again, what we tend to do as a society rooted in ignorance is ignore ignorance through saying some things are simply beyond just simple ignorance. What the Buddha realized and what I'm teaching is that nothing is beyond that. If we really want to resolve the issues of riots or reacting to losing my keys, I have to understand what's occurring. And so the event is much more impactful on society. But again, that we maybe what I'm trying to say in all this is that the last 3 months is a perfect example of losing our minds over something that we fabricate as much bigger than is what's normally occurring in the world. And what I'm saying is that nothing is new because everything is rooted in ignorance.
It also doesn't mean that you don't react appropriately to the lost keys or a riot. It just is. So
Yeah.
You're just not getting stuck by that second arrow, which makes you mindless.
Yep.
And
that's the point.
Practice is just simply to give that space and time as you understand the 3 marks. It just builds a little time for you to react appropriately.
Yes.
Again, it's all dukkha, and dukkha is not just the extreme, it's the little, it's
Yes.
every moment.
And that's an important point. If we can't remove the obsession of not finding my keys, I cannot hope to understand what's going on in the world, can I? And again, that's where the Buddhist Dhamma takes us back away from the distraction of the big events and brings us back into where our life is occurring. It unites the mind and the body so that mind and body united can see things clearly, can understand that losing my keys doesn't matter, and that doesn't matter to me. I don't take it personally. Of course, we recognize what's going on in the world. And again, to me, my response now is what the Buddha said, is to take to the Dhamma like my hair's on fire, because I know that's the only real resolution. But it's the only safe place that I can establish for myself, too. I can build walls all around me, which is interesting where some of the walls are going up today. I can build walls all around me. But if my mind is still rooted in greed, aversion, and deluded thinking, manifesting as constant fear, those walls aren't going to do me any good at all. Or I can build the walls of the Dhamma around me and understand what's occurring. I had an interesting dream last night. I don't have dreams often, but I guess I'm spending too much time watching the news. And I had my dream, and I only remember this brief little part of it, was I was walking down the street somewhere where I was never before. I never was there before. And I had a thought, I might get shot because I'm white. I've never had that thought before. It's been instilled in me through what I'm exposed to in the world. But I don't think I'm going to get likely to get shot. But it's just an example of how what's going on in the world influences the way we think. And if I happen to get shot, I get shot. Nothing will change in the world except you'll have Ron teaching you next week. The Dhamma will still be here. Ignorance will still be present. I will have lived a life to its conclusion. It's not even something to be noticed, really, except by those that love me. Michael.
Both the things that David mentioned, both of them are actually, and Tim responded to, and I understand all that's going on. Both of them are actually distractions to the mind, calm and peaceful mind. But both of them, no matter the magnitude of either one, are going to put us into another cycle of dependent origination.
Yeah.
So, I mean, looking at it from that perspective, both of them are just a continuation of ignorance if they're not understood at the root cause.
That's right. That's right. Well said.
John, may I?
Please.
Hi,
Kevin.
I thought it was appropriate, given what you've described here and sort of this phenomenon of reaction that we've seen in the last 3 weeks. And it's really been an experience for humanity to go deeper and really experience the phenomena of becoming. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Because that's what we're talking about. When we're reacting to worldly events, we are actually personally experiencing the phenomena of becoming, as we know.
Well said, yeah.
That's what you've all been describing, and that's what we've really been given the opportunity as humans here and connected through that. And moreover, the people in this room who are Dhamma practitioners, we're able to really get insight into the phenomena of becoming, how we contribute individually to that phenomenon through worldly causes and conditions and events that are not able to be changed unless we sit on our cushion, unless we listen to you and others in this room and the teachings outlaid by the awakened ones. So we have had a direct experience and a great context here of experiencing the phenomenon of becoming dependent origination, I think.
Well, thank you, Kevin. Yeah, the Buddha states it is from ignorance that we become further ignorant. That's really the essence of dependent origination. And so as we continue to ignore ignorance, that the essence of ignorance is found in its root word, and the nature of ignorance is to ignore ignorance. And so we create these very powerful but subtle strategies to continue to do that. And these strategies that likely started as an individual strategy then grow through association to collective strategies. And we get caught up and we become entangled in the world. Do you see how? Thank you, Kevin, for pointing that out. I mean, that's the actual process of becoming entangled in the world. And again, it comes back to from ignorance of Four Noble Truths.
John, can I ask you one thing?
John, I'll wait.
Wait, one second, Dethane.
Nothing.
Okay, Dethane.
Yeah, this is a very interesting conversation. One of the things that really kind of stands out with me, as I look at the causes, the causation of suffering is the clinging, and particularly the clinging of views.
Yep.
When I talk about that, like for example, there's a nuance to this that I think really, I feel, at least for me, really needs to be explored. For example, my mother has her perspective is, Christianity, the Christian path is the way to eternal life. That's a view, and to take that view from her, that will be a spiritual desolation.
Yep,
So it's not as, for me, I think it's not as simple as just, the profound courage to be able to move from a view that's clinging to a unclinging view, to move towards dwelling in emptiness, like you say, as the Kula Sutta says, it's almost like jumping off a cliff. Yeah. And so to have human beings to take that on is a tall order for people.
Here's the difference, Dethane.
Yeah.
I don't interrupt you, but we're not talking about human beings. We're talking about me. We're talking about you. Again, we're getting caught up in the need for Buddhism to be a salvific religion rather than an individual way of developing understanding of the world, and that is the problem. I heard someone say last night or the night before that we're all children of Abraham. I'm not, but to promote that belief creates this subtle tension in the world, and there's endless numbers of those types of beliefs that we put out there, and this person had to be a person of authority. And again, it creates this inner distraction that can only be resolved through understanding. So I understand what the man said. I'm not a child of Abraham. I understand the reference, but I also understand how hurtful any type of reference like that is to the general population. So we think that religion is our. I might get people to walk out of this room, or you might close your screen when I say this. But religion is more the cause for hate in this world than anything else, and it's because of the divisiveness of those kind of beliefs that insisted I'm a child of Abraham. When people that don't believe that way are now have to confront that. There's no end to that. The only resolution, not salvation, is to understand why these things occur. So I'm sorry to interrupt you, Dethane, but that was it was an important point to make there. So please continue if you can.
Well, I suppose, I hear what you're saying, and actually I agree. I just don't know how other people will follow that. Like my mother, for example, will follow that, or would even accept that.
She likely won't. That's not a concern. Again, I don't mean to interrupt you, but it's such an important point that I'll argue with you a little bit about it. Mm-hmm. The point of the Dhamma is not that someone else might find some resolution. The point of the Dhamma is that I will. Mm-hmm. Again, the Buddha did not teach. We keep wanting the Buddhist Dhamma to be a religion because that's what we're familiar with. And it's not. It's important to see that it's not. A few weeks ago, I posted an article finally called Salvation-Free Buddhism. If you haven't read it, I encourage you to read it because it makes this point. I'm not trying to denigrate religion or anybody that believes in religion. I'm trying to be an authentic Dhamma teacher and state that. Because if we're going to awaken, we have to get rid of magical views because look at what it's developed in the world. Some of the greatest wars of all time were wars rooted in religion. And we want to ignore that.
Yeah, and John, you've done that with the foundation. What we've established here. We do a good job with that. I think we tend to keep it very neutral, or keep it. What we talk about, the Dhamma, is more of a method, and as we use the word practice, but that's a good distinction as opposed to something salvific or looking, to save everything. We're working on a process and a practice and a method that is still clear and available. As Matt says that often.
Yeah, and we understand through the Dhamma that I can't be saved because there's nothing to be saved. When you understand the Dhamma, you realize that probably one of the first things you really get a grasp of. What am I trying to save? A mind and body rooted in ignorance? That's what the Buddha talks about, wandering in samsara endlessly. That's what he's talking about. And it's the need for salvation that keeps us wandering. What is there to be saved about me? I'm a sixth property person. I've lived a human life like every other human being. There's nothing extraordinary about me or anybody else. You could say, I'm just trying to get by. And I found my method for getting by is the Buddha's Dhamma. I don't feel the need to save everybody because I know I can't. I'm just like the Buddha. I understand that. Nobody can be saved by me. I can encourage that. I can example it. I can hold a space for it. But I have to do it first myself. The most loving thing I can do for myself and every other human being, including Officer Chauvin and President Trump and Nancy Pelosi, is to wake up. Instead of calling some of those people names, I almost said something I shouldn't say here, because I don't like them, because they create a reaction to me, or they live their lives by creating reaction. I can maintain a calm and peaceful mind. I don't have to get entangled in it anymore. I'm so grateful and fortunate for having come across these teachings of the world's most peaceful human being. We continue. I'm sorry, Julie, you had a question. Good.
Yeah, what I was going to say was, I almost lost now my thought, but it doesn't, all these things are all, the experience can just be a memory. And the second arrow is the clinging to the memory of the past, right?
Yeah, really.
As simple as that.
Yep. The clinging to the memory is constantly sticking that arrow in, and we maintain it.
That's the point that is difficult, is when the memory comes in, not to.
Yeah. But that's as a result of conditioned thinking. So direct Dhamma practice deconditions a conditioned mind. That's what it's designed to do. And so the clinging that we develop through reaction simply falls away. It's not magical. It's not magical. It's methodical. It's step by step. Michael, can this wait? Yeah. I don't mean, yeah, everybody else is talking. Why am I cutting you off? But let me finish the sutta. Let me go back again, one line, just to bring it back into context. They understand what is actually present and understand the origination, the allure, the drawbacks, and its passing away. They do not become sorrowful, regretful, or distraught. They remain disjoined from pleasure and pain. My whole life, I thought that the purpose of having a human life was to chase after any pleasure I could identify and avoid any pain that I identified. And that led to a life of years and years of grasping after pleasure and years of grasping after avoiding pain or aversion, greed, aversion, and deluded thinking. The Buddha continues, the well-instructed person, understanding, I'm sorry, I'm having a little trouble picking up even 30-point font right now. The well-instructed person, understanding stress or dukkha, does not generate a mental reaction to pain, pleasure, or neither pleasure nor pain. That's the description of an awakened, fully mature human being. This is the distinction between those uninformed and those well-informed of the Four Noble Truths. The Buddha makes that distinction often in life. The only distinction that he sees between human beings, and this was so significant, maybe I will touch on that. The only distinction that Siddhartha Gautama ever made between human beings is whether they were practitioners of the Four Noble Truths, practitioners of the Dhamma or not. And he lived in a world that was much more racially strifed, if that's a phrase, than ours, much more. It was around him every moment, not like me growing up in white America. He lived with systematic and established a hierarchical system that was racist and misogynist to its core. There's not one teaching where the Buddha says racism is bad. There's a lot of teachings where he says hate rooted in ignorance is bad. And that's what we're doing. That's what we're chasing after. He invited people into his sangha that actually put his own life in death, because during India, during that time in southern Nepal, the caste system said that only certain people could learn anything. And women were not allowed to learn anything at all. If you were part of the untouchables, which was a great part of the society, think of a common ghetto, a modern ghetto. If you were one of that class, you were not allowed to be taught anything. And if the teacher taught you, they're going to be put to death. We don't live in that world anymore, do we? We've improved our social position to a certain extent, but ignorance still prevails. A well-instructed person who has developed the heartwood of the Dhamma, meaning the Eightfold Path, understands the arising and the passing away of all phenomena, meaning they understand the 3 marks of existence, like the study we did last summer. This also relates to right meditation, my commentary. This also relates to right meditation and remaining mindful of the arising and the passing away of the breath in the body. That is the experiential microcosm of impermanence. And when we notice it, we're noticing impermanence. If we're grasping after that, we're not doing that anymore, are we? If we're trying to manipulate the breath, is what I'm talking about. But simply being mindful of my breath as it presents itself to me is awakening. It's uniting my mind and my body, and it's being mindful of the arising and the passing away of all things. Obsession with what is stressful causes one to become stuck in a feedback loop, only focus on the arising of the stressful experience. Jhana meditation is the unique meditation method taught for the sole purpose of developing the concentration necessary to remain mindful of the arising and the passing away of the breath in the body. I'm going to skip ahead of a little bit of commentary. I keep losing my spot. The Buddha's words. From this wise, concentrated foundation, one can then clearly notice the arising, the allure, the drawbacks, and the passing away of ordinary phenomena. They avoid becoming obsessed with and stuck, these are my comments, I'm sorry, and stuck to only the arising of ordinary phenomena. Noticing the arising, the allure, the drawbacks, and the passing away of ordinary phenomena is taught as the 4 foundations of mindfulness. The Buddha's words. Craving and aversion no longer distract the mind or continue ignorance. Approval and rejection, or approval and acceptance, are dismissed, no longer in existence. Now, no dust remains or sorrow or regret either. The Buddha is talking not about some utopic future. He's talking about the present conditions in India, which are almost exactly the same as the present conditions of the world today. Now, no dust remains or sorrow or regret either. He's describing awakened human beings in the midst of a chaotic world. For those that understand the Dhamma, they have left behind becoming further ignorant. Thank you, Kevin. They have left behind becoming further ignorant and have arrived at the far shore of awakening. No dust remains, my commentary, no dust remains refers directly to the Aryapariyasana Sutta and many others, and who the Buddha is directing in his Dhamma for those with little dust in their eyes. And it was that understanding that set the Buddha off on his teaching career, because he finally came to the understanding that there were some human beings with just a little dust in their eyes. And it is on this statement, and many others, but on this statement that I say, the Buddha wasn't teaching salvation. He wasn't trying to establish salvation across the world. He was trying to meet and teach those with a little dust in their eyes. It's such a significant statement. What he's also implying is if you have a lot of dust in your eyes, you're going to have a much more difficult time developing the Dhamma. But it's not possible. As the Buddha started developing his Dhamma, first teaching those with little dust in their eyes, and as the original sangha grew, they were able to interact more with the surroundings, and they were able to reach people with a little bit more dust in their eyes. And that started causing some difficulties in the sangha, but then it started reflecting the world. And I'm referring to someone like Devadatta, the Buddha's cousin, who tried to kill his cousin, the Buddha, twice. There's a person who was part of the sangha with a lot of dust in his eyes. But at that point, the well-established sangha was able to learn from the example of Devadatta and that ignorant mind that resulted in violence against their teacher. It became a learning experience then. Those with a little dust in their eyes is what the Buddha first reached out for. And then as the Dhamma grew, and as we continue to grow the Dhamma, we can be a living example of a calm and peaceful mind in the midst of chaos. And I should have said, and I said those with a little dust in their eyes. That's the end of the sutta. Thank you for listening. What a remarkable sutta. Before we go around it, just a quick comment. There's two suttas that are searched mostly on my website. One is the Bahia Sutta, and that's why I put it up front, and the other is this, the Sallatha Sutta. So people hit them, which means that people hear reference to the Sallatha Sutta often, or they wouldn't be searching it, trying to find out what it is. And hopefully some of them will come to the Buddha's actual teaching on this. So let's go around the room, but I think we'll start online. And someone's right down here. I can't see who that is. Mary, how are you?
Good morning, John. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Mary.
It's a wonderful sutta. You know, I've done a lot of listening and reading during this time, and I think at the end of the day, the matters of the world, whether it's right now or, you know, in the future or the past, if they come through your filter that is informed by the Eightfold Path, you'll know what to do. I think that's all I have to say today, but thank you, John.
That's well said, Mary. Thank you. Kevin, how are you?
Doing well, John. Nice to see everybody. Really timely and useful teaching here, John. I like how it's been a bridge to a couple of us in this room who were here about 6 weeks ago. We had an online retreat. I know Josh was there, and there's a particularly beautiful bridge that I think I found, and John, with some skill, I've gotten better at this and won't do what I've done before, but in the Sallatha Sutta, there's a beautiful point at the end. There's a distinction between those informed and those uninformed, affordable truths, kind of what Mary was just saying. The well-instructed person who's developed Heartwood, when we hear that, we should be really listening. Heartwood of the Dhamma. The well-instructed person who's developed Heartwood of the Dhamma understands the arising and passing away of all phenomenon. And we have a beautiful bridge. I know Josh will remember this from our teacher Sariputta when he taught us on the retreat, that he told Ananda that he was sensitive to the arising and passing away of all phenomenon. And that's exactly what we just said in the Sallatha Sutta, beautiful, direct, to the point teaching. And in that other sutta with Sariputta, he says that just as a wood fire's flames arise and pass away, I was sensitive to the unbinding of wrong views, which is what the Thane was saying earlier. So those two little bridges and two very succinct suttas have provided a nice sort of set of goalposts for the sangha and people like who have been on the retreat, and it's all available still. So really neat to see that Dhamma wheel keep turning, John. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Thane, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good. Just contemplating what you said and chewing it over. That's it.
I'm glad you joined us today. I think that's Liz. Liz, is that you?
Hi, everyone. Hi, John.
Hi, Liz.
One of my favorite sutras makes so much sense. And thank you, John, for describing it in so many different ways that it's so applicable to what's going on in the world today. So thank you for that.
Thank you for joining, Liz. Josh, how are you?
Good.
Hello,
John.
Josh. Oh, there you are.
Hi, everybody. Hi, John.
Hi.
Well, as usually, every time I come to these, I get my mind whirling and try to absorb as much as I can. Maybe you can help me sort out a couple things that came up in my mind.
Please.
I'm kind of struggling about what is the difference between personal responsibility towards my awakening and what is the relationship of my social responsibility in general. For example, I think we all can agree that unfounded fears are a great source of dukkha in suffering. But there are such things as reasonable fears. If I were a black parent and I had black children and they were in a situation where they had to walk to school or go someplace, I think I would have a reasonable fear what might happen to them, and this is what I hear when I hear black parents speaking. The question is it reasonable for me to take place in a protest that may change policy that would reduce the chances of my children being hurt?
The should or the shouldn't is not a question that I'll answer, because that's an individual decision. What I'm saying, if you are going to be, the most effective protester would be an awakened protester. Let me just put it that way. So it all comes back to what I say. And for me, once I got to a certain level of understanding, I'm not even going to go there. The right intention, the second factor of the Eightfold Path, follows right view. And in order to maintain right intention, meaning the intention to remain harmless as a protester, if I'm going to remain harmless as a protester, I must have right view. Now, I'm not saying that people that don't have right view shouldn't protest. This is such an important point we're getting to in this discussion, and it relates directly to the Sallatha Sutta. I don't care if you protest, Josh, and I don't care the nature of your protest. What I do care about is if I protest and the nature of my protest. And then if I'm going to go out there, I'm going to go out there with an awakened mind, not a mind that's still rooted in ignorance. And you started your question with how do you I don't remember the exact words, but how do you practice the Dhamma personally and still live in the world socially? To me, it's the same thing. I live much more effectively and peacefully in the world now that I know the Dhamma. I didn't before. My social interactions, I mean, I can think of, I never did anything to intentionally hurt people, but I've hurt a lot of people out of my own ignorance. And when I started realizing that, it was a kind of a harrowing thought of how, again, it was first a self-referential thought, and that led to something, was how incredibly insensitive could I have been to do these things to people, including parents, brothers, sisters, friends. But I did it out of ignorance, and that allowed me to not take it personally, but understand the immediacy of me ending that, because I don't want to be hurtful to other people, and I don't want to be hurtful to myself anymore. The first 35 years of my life, you could say, were characterized by hurting myself and inadvertently hurting a lot of people around me. And it was all out of ignorance. And I see that that's just what's going on today. So the most loving thing I can do for myself and all the ascension beings is to take to the Dhamma and awaken. So does that help?
Yes.
Help you a little bit, Josh?
If I protest with kindness and compassion, it's different than protesting with anger and hate. Anger
and frustration and hate, yes. Yes, and think about think about if there was a protest with all awakened Dhamma practitioners, what it would look like. Very quiet, very slow. But again, it's not, again, I'm not a comment on protest or protesters. That's part of the world. And there's a lot of people that are righteous in their beliefs and are expressing in that way. All that I'm saying is that it's a much better expression if that expression is rooted in awakened points of view rather than ignorant points of view. Thank you. And the only responsibility that I can attach that to is to myself, and then be an example. I'm fortunate I have a position here where I can teach something that I think is so useful to the world, but not to save it. How are you, Lorna?
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
I've listened to your talk. Obviously, it's a wonderful talk. It's very to the point. For some reason, my mind was not really not really wanting to look at the topic you were talking about today, but it went on another tangent. And I've seen that that you could describe living in ignorance as like a stop clock. That I'm talking about the old type of clock with the face, with hands. Even a stop clock is right twice a day. And it's just that if you're living in ignorance, sometime you're wanting that phenomena to be just lined up like you want it to be lined up. It does happen sometimes just by freak.
Yeah.
But the other 11 hours, 59 minutes are pulled out of alignment just by our own anatta, our own views and opinions about life, and our own eye-making. So I can just see that, and that when the clock's lined up and everything's, that's what we grasp onto. Everybody's agreeing with me, or it's a beautiful day or whatever it is. But really, that's available all the 24 hours of the day. If you didn't have the anatta, the eye making, which creates the resistance and intolerance to what is happening, I can just see the freakiness of that.
Did you say freakiness?
Well, if you look at a stop clock,
yeah,
it's a freak. When it's right, it's just a freak.
That's a perfect word. Yeah.
It's not a planned or an organ. It's just a freak at that time.
Yeah.
But we move past that minute, and then everybody's in ignorance again and wanting everything to be different. Do you know what I mean?
It's just a brilliant description of the three marks of existence. It really is.
Anyway, thank you, John.
Thank you, Lauren. That was wonderful. Did I get everybody who's on screen? I think I did. I guess so. How are you, Ron?
I'm good. God, every time I read the Sallatha Sutta, I'm surprised at how much deeper it is than the first time.
Yeah.
And it should be one of the core suttas because it dives right into the second noble truth.
Yeah.
It lays it out in detail. And the second noble truth can be confusing when you first hit the Dhamma. Well,
yeah.
They all are actually. They need a lot of thought and expounding. But to see the mechanism of clinging and craving is just so important. That you can,
key.
So that you can recognize when it happens.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the point. And we talked a little bit about just the actual practical practice. You prepare yourself for that moment through practice. And if you don't, you're not prepared. That's all. Nobody has to do this. Nobody must do this. Those that want to, those with a little dust in their eyes will do it. Thank you, Rob. Tim, good to see you this morning.
Good morning. It's so nice to be back.
Yeah.
And
so nice to hear your comments and questions because
yeah. So I have a ton to say, and I'm not going to.
You can. This is the forum.
But I will say this: the last month, I've had a very challenging experience with the Dhamma, but I stuck with it.
Oh, good for you.
And I've done a lot of introspective probing. I'm not going to go into it. I'd love to someday with you,
Anytime.
do that, and I have with some people in the sangha, and and they know the reasons why I'm apprehensive to really go into it, because I don't think it would be fair. But it relates directly to the Dhamma, it relates directly to the human condition of our lives at this present moment. That being said, maybe one day you and I can sit down and have a conversation, because I would love to have your insight on it.
Give me a call and let's get together.
But that being said, and this relates to the sangha, to the sutta. You know, a common thing that's said through a lot of suttas is, you know, wanting things to be different than what they are, and that's directly related to craving, desire.
Yep.
Okay. And it's my contention that one of the results of that is resentment.
Yep. Mentioned as one of the aspects of dukkha.
One of the aspects of dukkha. And when we talk about things like resentment, the hindrances, those are things that are deeply embedded in our personalities, and everybody's personality is different.
Yep.
So it's very introspective. So that's one thing. And then one thing I really thought about, and this may draw a lot of ire, is we talk about empathy and compassion as a very integral part of right view. However, if one desires, and I know I do, if I want people to be empathetic and compassionate to me, recognizing my existence, a tricky way of trying to get that is to be empathetic and compassionate, and that's wrong.
It is wrong.
And so what happens?
It's wrong. It's wrong because it's rooted in I-making.
It's rooted in I-making.
Yeah.
That's right. So when that happens, and you see this a lot in social justice, you see this in virtue, whatever they call it, signaling, that compassion and that lack of reciprocation feeds into this pile of stress and suffering, because it's something you crave.
Yep.
So these are I'm just ballparking it here. And then the last thing with that, there's again a part of it, another hindrance that I don't think we've ever talked about, and maybe it's not a hindrance, maybe it's something else, is this, again, it depends on your personality, the inadequacies that one may feel in society, in their family, in their life, in their world, in what's going on. Am I doing enough for social justice? Am I doing enough for my family? So there's this inadequacy thing, and it is based on the past, present, and future. I mean, the example would be
also self-referential.
And it's all of it.
Yep.
All of what I'm saying is, in the present, if you think about it, you can say, well, I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm not good looking enough. And that inadequacy in the past would be, should I have worked harder? Should I have done this? Should I have done that? Should I? You know, these are the things that we throw at ourselves. And then in the future, will I ever be good enough? Will I ever be able? And so those things, what I've been noticing, and I have circled it, and I'd like to talk more about it. I don't want to take up too much more time. Is that it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, and it feeds into this. Michael said it perfectly. This all is at that dependent origination. This is all feeding that cycle. There's 12 causative links. This becoming, this rebirth, this formation of consciousness, and then it just goes. And depending on your personality traits, it can be destructive, not only mentally but physically.
What can be destructive?
Those repressed feelings of those hindrances of resentment, of anger, of rage.
I agree.
And they can become incredibly self-destructive if we don't. And the Dhamma, if done correctly, and again, you have to focus. If you allow those feelings to be understood, it can be alleviated.
Yeah, that's the process. That's the method.
Right. So that's kind of what I've been toying with in a nutshell. And you can see there's a lot there. And the sutta is perfect because that is the second arrow.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very broadly, it is.
Yeah, so the complications of the world, I mean, it seems it seems like we have to react to things that we want to change. But reaction has not changed anything. It's brought about legislation and things have changed, but we're still fighting the same battles that we've always fought because the one thing that needs to change hasn't, because we haven't addressed it. But again, we can't expect. Let's talk, because I may be wrong, but I'm getting a little bit of kind of what the Thane was touching on, this little bit of salvation, like the world needs saving, the world needs to be different.
No,
or,
not at all.
Okay, like we'll talk about it, because as soon as I think that something needs to be different, I've lost my mind. Why? Because it can't be. It's already there. So, and to think that it should be different precludes me from actually finding a resolution or developing a resolution through the Dhamma. And again, I'm also talking about, this is what Dhamma practitioners do. Those that are deeply entangled in the world, or who don't care anything about the Buddha's Dhamma or awakening or anything spiritual or religious, etc., just living in the world, they're not going to agree with this, but they don't have to. The Buddha did not teach a Dhamma that everybody has to agree to make it legitimate. That's religion's purpose. That's why you see religious wars. Nobody fights a war over taking to the Dhamma. You either do it or you don't. And I'll make a prediction within impermanence. It'll never happen that there'll be a war based on the Buddhist Dhamma. But right now, there's a war based on Buddhism. And it's a racial war in Burma. I'm like getting excited about that, because it really, maybe that's one thing I cling to, is people using Buddhism to promote more crusades, which is, again, it's occurring right now, but nothing has changed. People are still practicing Buddhism, calling themselves Buddhist practitioners, that are deeply rooted in ignorance. And that ignorance is manifesting, even among so-called Buddhist practitioners, as racial violence. So you either practice the Dhamma or you don't, you know? And you really hone in on that, Tim. This is our choice. This is what the Buddha taught. This is what I hope I teach. This is the clarity that I hope I can bring to the Dhamma. It's this and it's not that. It's not about saving the world. It's not about ending racism. It's about ending all the underlying cause of human suffering within me, period. It's a pretty good thing. Hello, David.
Hello, John. Thank you. I'm good.
Becky, good to see you.
Hi, John. Really nice to be here. Nice to see everybody again. Nice to get out of the house.
Yeah.
I just learned so much just listening to this today. And I loved what Tim said, and I feel like I can relate to what he said. I kind of have a question. My question is this I making? After I tell you that the sequence, that's my final question. If someone who was close to you, who is close to you, or was close to you, did something profoundly hurtful to you, and they did it, and you understand that they did it because they were ignorant and that they didn't realize what they were doing, even though you tried to help them see it.
Mm-hmm.
And you have not been able to communicate with that person since then. Should you just keep trying, or are you saying, is it okay to say, this happened and I accept it, and I'm not going to work to fix it or change it. I'm going to be okay with it.
Boy, thank you. I kind of have an answer.
Yeah.
Right speech is speech that is necessary and helpful, and it's honest.
Mhm.
And so each situation is going to be different there. In a situation where someone has hurt me, whether it's directly or indirectly, I have to ask myself, is my response necessary? Meaning, is it likely? Necessary means, is it going to fall on deaf ears or not? And if I know that it's not, right speech tells me that, and right speech is then informing, this is true noble silence. Noble silence isn't something, I'm going to go away for a weekend in the woods with a bunch of people and not talk to them. That's not noble silence. Right speech informs noble silence. And so by me practicing right speech in that moment, that leads to noble silence. I don't say anything. Depending on the situation, if I feel there's some possibility of, I don't want to use the word rescuing the relationship, it sounds a little too desperate, of maintaining a relationship with someone who is acting out of ignorance and causing harm to me and others, then there's a decision I have to make. And sometimes that decision is, I no longer want to put myself in this position. It's not a position of hate, it's a position of practicality. I work hard to maintain a calm and peaceful mind, and I have an individual right to decide who I'm going to associate with. That's the essence of the Buddhist Dhamma, isn't it? And if I continually insist on associating with hurtful people because I need to change them, what am I doing? It's the essence of I-making. It's the essence of the religious crusades.
Wow.
So we like to think that there's something selfish about removing ourselves from a hopeless situation. It's the essence of selflessness because we understand the nature of self.
Oh, thank you, John.
Thank you for asking the question. It's remarkable how by the questions and the comments we all make, we really get to the heart of the matter. Much more so than if I just spouted this out. This sutta is an example of a well-informed, well-focused sutta, and it's really remarkable. And as the Buddha said in the Anapanasati Sutta, this is something that's unique in the world and I think needed. We'll see. Thank you, Becky. Good to see you, Kevin. How are you?
My head is spinning. It's really intense. I mean, truly, the world is a flame. I mean, that's what it comes down to, and it can be a flame socially and health-wise. Now it seems like there's this whole concatenation in flames, and then even personal flames that we all experience. But in studying these suttas and coming here and taking to the Dhamma and learning how to meditate and learning right concentration, I think we can manage these flames and we can calm our minds. This certainly helps to do it in this sutta. It's really significant in that way. And your teaching, it's interesting when you're teaching, you're saying, oh, those are my words. Oh, that's the Buddha's words. And now it's very difficult to tell which is which.
Uh-oh. I don't know if that's good or bad.
That's good. It's good.
But I think, it's important to distinguish between my words and the Buddha's words. But thank you for your kind words.
Thank you. And really, that's where it's at.
Kevin, again, the insight in your simple words, you just got it. It's just about changing our minds. It's not about saving the world because it's an impossible task. Thank you. We're all practicing social distancing, but I have to mention that Julie is sitting on Michael's lap right now. Not really, they're just next to each other. Hello, Michael.
Hi, John. Several things. A lot of good points have been brought up, and just to kind of like give my view on things. Tim, I was listening to you quite a bit there, as I always do. And the question of, you brought up compassion there, and compassion itself is a selfless act, So anytime there's any expectation of a return of it, it's not true compassion. And I think we've touched on it before, John, the idea of compassion being coming from the right place, or understanding it as it should be imparted. And again, I'll bang this drum because I bang it all the time, and it comes with the understanding of three marks of existence, and feeling compassion for recognizing who we are in this phenomenal world, and we actually form compassion for ourselves first before we impart it to others.
Yep.
So that's just why I want to. I don't know if that helps you, Tim. Maybe it does. But I just want to touch on that. The other thing, Becky, I was listening also to you, and I got out of that. I understand that like we have like associations that like we wish that people were different than what they were, and the events in our lives were different than what they were. And obviously, this is one of the hindrances. It'll be a hindrance to your own practice if you keep desiring for this to occur. So it's more or less acceptance of, and again, three marks of existence, recognizing the that some people are not knowing of right view, right action, and again, compassion for these individuals, and hope that they do recognize, for themselves what right action and obviously right view is most importantly. John, another thing, I also think perspective is needed, and from your words, and which I actually just jumped off the page at me, and I enjoy it. And I know it might be redundant, but again, you can never hear this too much, and it comes on the first page of your introduction. Understanding the first noble truth means understanding that as a consequence of living in the phenomenal world, there will be stress and unhappiness, there will be suffering. So understanding dukkha, hey, we're living in this phenomenal world. It's a consequence of this existence that we are going to suffer, and the recognition of that, and the perspective of understanding that, for me anyhow, it made me like just almost like it just like kind of like gave me a little bit of a wake up call to understand that yes, we're in, being that we're living in this existence, yes, we are going to experience, or we're born into ignorance, so to say, or we exist in ignorance, or our views are ignorant. So, and it's for us to work on that. Okay. The last thing I want to go over was, which I really liked. It was on the last page of the sutta, and let me see if this is where it is. Okay. Obsession with what is stressful causes one to become stuck in a feedback loop, only focused on the arising of the stressful experience. Jhana meditation is the singular meditation method taught for the sole purpose to develop the concentration necessary to remain mindful of the arising and the passing away of the breath in the body. Very important. From this well-concentrated foundation, one can then clearly notice the arising, the allure, the drawbacks, and the passing away of ordinary phenomena, and avoid becoming obsessed with and stuck to only the arising of ordinary phenomena. So I just find that to be extremely important. The breath that we take, it arises and it passes away, as does all phenomena.
Yep.
It's a perfect, understanding of just something that we do every moment as we breathe, is to understand the relationship that is to the phenomenal world, and anything and everything that will arise and will pass away, just as our breath does. So I just thought that was an important thing to, or correlation to make there also. So that's all I have.
As always, Michael, thank you.
Thank you.
Really well said. The just to hold myself out as the vanguard of true compassion. I'm just kidding when I say that, but when I saw Mr. Floyd getting murdered by Mr. Chauvin, I was coming to tears thinking about it. I was certainly horrified by what happened to the human being, to Mr. Floyd, and I felt great compassion, true compassion for him. But I also felt true compassion for Mr. Chauvin, who had to live in a mind that was that full of hate. Can you imagine having to live day by day, moment by moment? That man deserves compassion. And that's what the only way we can be truly compassion to somebody like Mr. Chauvin is with wisdom and understanding. That there was nothing he did that was racist. Everything he did was rooted in hatred. And ultimately it was hatred of himself that manifested in that horrible, horrible action. That's true compassion. And again, I'm not holding myself, I'm kidding when I said I'm holding myself out as a vanguard. That's the compassion that the Buddha taught. It's just that. Thank you for bringing it up.
Okay.
Julia, good to see you. And actually, I'm kidding. Michael's sitting on Julia's lap.
We're a unit.
Yeah. You're not. Yeah. You're just.
Better half.
So many points that. First, I want to say thank you to Becky for what you said, because I too have something similar to your experience in my life. And it's difficult because it's my, it's with my own child. So it is hard sometimes. It does give you a lot of dukkha, especially if you try to grasp at the relationship that is at this time not the same as when you had a little child, you know what I'm saying? So it's a totally different experience. So you have to kind of let it go, for the time being, because otherwise it's just going to, debilitate yourself with just more clinging and grasping, and just keeping you in that whole loop.
And, well, I love what John said, that it's eye making to try to think that you can fix the situation.
Yes, exactly. Yes. Right. All those comments are very helpful to me also. So thank you. The thing that I liked in the sutta was that how the Buddha describes the uninformed and the well-informed, and the only difference was both of them still had at the sixth sense base things coming in, but it's just the reaction of how they react to it that's the difference. One is objectifying, the uninformed is objectifying everything, making it all about themselves, and causing themselves more suffering, more becoming further ignorant and all that. And the well-informed, well, the reason why they can stop it there and not allow it to affect them is because of jhana meditation. And I like what you said, John. You said that the jhana meditation was experiencing the microcosm of the phenomena world. Yep. So it's just watching. It's like conditioning your mind, watching the arising and the falling away of the breath. Just that conditions your mind, and then it allows you in the outer world to allow that also. You almost don't have to really understand very much of anything, but practicing that doesn't make you understand impermanence.
Yep. And yes, thank you. And it's all encompassing, but it's very simple when you drill down to it.
Yes, it is. It's very natural,
Thank you, Julie. And that line, it's interesting when I see the lines that really mean something to each of you, and that's interesting too. But that's such a powerful. Many people come to the Dhamma. First, modern Buddhists, most of them hang on the creed of no such thing as self, and this ridiculous view of emptiness, that all things are empty. That's not what the Buddha meant. And that line points directly to that. The uninformed feels feelings of pain, feelings of pleasure, and neutral feelings. We don't lose the ability to feel. We gain the ability to not react to our feelings and create fake identities over them. That's the significant difference in that one line. The informed feels feelings of pleasure, feelings of pain, and neutral feelings. They simply do not react to it. When you hear me say that, then we become fully alive human beings, because we have no longer resistance, obsession to our feelings, as the Buddha teaches. It's just a remarkable teaching. The keys to freedom are simply found through the Eightfold Path, and they're there for all of us. So that was one of the subtitles I had for this thing was the freedom of the middle way, and it's just that. We can live free in a world that is completely entangled with its own ignorance and not be touched by it. It's remarkable teachings. Does anybody else have any comments or questions?
I just want to
Online?
make one comment.
Please.
It's so much nicer to be here.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize that until we came back, because there's a whole different atmosphere.
Yeah.
When you're home, it's just not the same.
It isn't.
So I'm glad we're back together.
I am too. Thank you. And I'm glad you were able to join us online as well, though. I'll see you Tuesday. Great. Thank you, Ram. And Ram, you felt comfortable here?
Yeah.
Okay. I wanted to ask everybody, does everybody that's here feel comfortable?
Yeah.
Is there anything you would like me or Matt to do different?
Can you wear a hazmat suit?
No. I won't. This is kind of what I thought, that this would, we're responsible people, and we understand that as we all live our lives where we are responsible. So we're going to continue with this, and as long as we can, I'm looking forward to Tuesday. Tuesday will be another kind of special sutta as we reopen CRMC. I'm just not sure what sutta yet. I got to make a decision. I told Matt it was going to be the Locust Sutta, but now I'm thinking of the Dhamma Sutta. And I'm not going to tell you what that is if you don't know it. Mike?
John, just one, just like, I mean, I like it here. And it's like, as Becky has said, it is a different experience actually being here. But again, like, I also like as long as we can keep the windows open and stuff, I like the fresh air coming in. I don't know. I like a flow of air coming in, if that's okay. It's within reason.
Yeah, I agree. That's something that Matt and Ram and I discussed, and we'll see if it gets really hot. We'll have maybe the windows open and the air conditioning on, but we're going to work it out. We're going to work it out as a sangha. I'm not making a decision for you and your safety. We're all making it together, and that's why I said if you're not comfortable coming out yet, that's fine too. There's no judgment there. We all have to make these decisions. And that's just the way it is, and it's worked out well. It feels so nice. As I was sitting here in meditation, it was just wonderful to be sitting here again with all of you, physically, but also online. That this technology that we've developed is remarkable, and that it worked so well. I think we had one glitch where that hacker got in there, but we made the change, and and it worked. And even that was an expression of being out in the world, isn't it? It happens. Well, thank you all online and for continuing with the Dhamma during all of this, and a really wonderful class. We'll finish with metta as we always do. So these are the Buddha's words on metta during a very troubling time, from the Karaniya Metta Sutta. This is what should be, I'm sorry, just to make the point. Metta was offered by the Buddha or taught by the Buddha during a time of strife, and part of that strife was other people ridiculing the original sangha, and they were having difficulty meditating while that was going on around them. And the Buddha taught, and there was other things too, but this is the Buddha's words. This is what should be done by one who is skilled in goodness and who knows the path of peace. Let them be able and upright, straightforward and gentle in speech, humble and not conceited, contented and easily satisfied, unburdened with duties such as saving the world, and frugal in their ways, peaceful and calm and wise and skillful, not proud or demanding in nature. Let them not do the slightest thing that the wise would later reprove. Wishing in gladness and in safety, may all beings be at ease. Whatever living beings there may be, whether they are weak or strong, omitting none, the great or the mighty, medium, short, or small, the seen and the unseen, those living near and far away, those born and to be born, future generations, may all beings be at ease. Let none deceive another or despise any being in any state. Let none through anger or ill will wish harm upon another, even as a mother protects with her life her child, her only child. So with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings. Officer Chauvin and George Floyd both had mothers, radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upwards to the skies and downwards to the depths, outwards and unbounded, freed from hatred and ill will. Whether standing or walking, seated or lying down, free from drowsiness, one should sustain this recollection. This is said to be the sublime abiding. By not holding to fixed views, the pure-hearted one, having clarity of vision, and being freed from all sense desires, is not born again into this world. Thank you all for a wonderful class this morning. Peace. Thank you all for joining online.
Bye, everybody.
See y'all. Bye-bye.